Hey folks, your old buddy C Squared here. Today I wanted to do a quick sort of status report video and touch base on how I'm feeling about the Panasonic GH5 after having used it for about 15 months now. I did a little status report video last year in the spring, I think it was, and kind of describing my experience with it at that point. So this is just a continuation of that. A lot of the things that I said about it then, I just feel the same now, or even more firmly about it. Particularly all the great video features and stuff. This camera really helps you grow if you're new to filmmaking, because there's just so much in it, that so many different things that will kind of help you explore the technical side of it without having to have an actual cinema camera. So for all those features, I still think this camera is fantastic. I still am totally blown away by the IBIS and the ability to kind of skip out on having a gimbal. I, like most people, have a limited budget for these things, so I have to prioritize about what I can really get for camera gear. And right now, I would rather buy another new drone than to buy a camera gimbal, because the Panasonic GH5 does really well for most of what I need it to do, and I can kind of just carefully move around with the camera, and it'll be really smooth and totally usable that way, rather than me having to spend another $700 or so on a decent gimbal. So anyway, that's just something to think about with these cameras. Now, the thing that's on most people's minds with the GH5 is, can they use the autofocus? Well, in my experience so far, they have developed the firmware well enough that I can use it for things like this, where it's just a talking head type video, and I'm in a situation where if it misses it or it loses me a little bit and it's too much to put up with, I could always go back and reshoot it. If it dodges a little bit, I'm not going to worry too much about it. Hopefully it won't freak everybody out. But nevertheless, I think it's really useful and usable for vlogging type situations and these talking head type videos. They've really gotten it so much better than it was when I first bought the camera. I wouldn't trust it even for these things back then. But like I said, I would still prefer to use manual focus whenever I'm doing something real crucial, especially if it's a performance of some kind where the shot can't really easily be redone. If you're shooting a live music performance, or if I'm doing instructional guitar videos, which I do professionally, and in those things, the video has to stay really stable. The image can't be dodging around and hunting for focus at all. So in those cases, I would rather use manual focus. And even when I'm recording video for my wife's channel, she does some cooking instruction and things like that, she can't easily go back and redo any particular segment, because it's a process that has to kind of be followed through in the case of cooking, of course. So I would rather just stand there and manually focus the camera in those cases. But like I said, in these types of situations with sort of a talking head type video or a vlogging video or anything like that, I really feel like the Panasonic's autofocus face tracking in particular has come far enough that it's really very usable now. I have tried using one area autofocus, which is kind of okay for some things, but I still don't really trust it a whole lot, and it does kind of hunt a little bit more than I want it to. So the face tracking and in the continuous autofocus is actually a pretty good feature that's been developed to the point now where you can kind of use it. So hopefully you can get some confidence for that if you're just still considering this camera. So I wasn't planning on doing a segment like this for the video, but I know it's really important to a lot of people if the autofocus for the GH5 can handle the vlogging selfie style angle. So that's what I'm doing right now. It's set on face tracking, and it seems to keep the box on my face pretty well. I don't know if it occasionally might lose focus, but you'll have to judge for yourself. But anyway, I think it's pretty good, and I've become a little bit more comfortable with using it than I used to be, and it's really shown itself to be pretty useful for me in a lot of situations. And like I said, I don't really do this kind of thing a whole lot, so I don't really have to rely on it too much, but you know, I think it is there when you need it, so you can be the judge of whether it's good enough for you or not. Okay, these are all the same settings that I had before, but I've switched over to the one area focus, where it just gives you a little block or a little square to put your subject in, and I've just placed that in the middle of the screen, so I'm trying to keep my face kind of there, and we'll see if it can stay on me. Now, one thing that seems to be important, I think, is that the ability to focus when you're wearing a hat or glasses or something like that, because I've noticed occasionally it seems to get confused about what's a face in the frame when it's... So the face tracking can sometimes get confused whenever you're wearing a hat or like or wearing glasses or something. It just seems to not be totally sure that it's a face that it's looking at on occasion. So so right now I'm trying the one area focus, and I just kind of put it in the middle, so I try to keep my face there, and we'll see if it keeps me in focus. Of course the sun's blasting and keep having to dial the ND filter down. So anyway, we'll see how this is working. I really don't think it's as reliable of an option, and it's a little bit of a challenge sometimes to keep your face in that little rectangular or square box in the center of the screen. So anyway, it's kind of an option, but not really the best one, so I still prefer the face tracking for this. Okay, so I've got it set for face tracking again, and this time I wanted to throw it a curve by wearing my glasses and my hat. It seems to have a little bit of trouble sometimes just keeping it recognized that it's a face if it's partially covered up with glasses and hats and stuff like that. So this is an example of how it's going to perform with that. And the sun is kind of being a little bit of a challenge right now, and I've got an ND filter on here. I don't know if that throws any other curve at it, but yeah, it seems to kind of be a little bit glitchy, I guess, about whether it's a face or not. But I don't know if it's giving up the focus or not. We'll have to take a look and see. But certainly something to keep in mind if you wanted to use this camera in a sort of vlogging style, if you need to wear glasses and a hat and things like that. So so let's just check it out and see what's going on with it. Also, I did a little quick video on a tip about using autofocus and switching between the face and objects that you might want to show or demonstrate on the screen, so I'll put a link to that up here somewhere, so be sure and check that out if you get a chance. If it had come out with the autofocus working as well as it does now, then I think this whole thing about can you trust the Panasonic GH5 or Panasonic's autofocus sucks or whatever, all the stuff that you hear people say, I really don't think that issue would exist anywhere near on the level that it does now. And as it is with reputations, it's always hard to reestablish your reputation after it's been harmed a little bit. So everybody already knew that the Canon dual pixel autofocus was fantastic. So you kind of come out of the gate competing with that. And if you're not able to compete with it, then automatically you kind of suck and everybody just associates you with not being as good. So I think the Lumix cameras, the GH5 in particular, kind of just got this sort of bad reputation about that depth from defocus technology and everything, and it not working as well as maybe they claimed it to work at first. So, but over time, they've been really good about updating it, and this is, to me, a real feather in the cap of Panasonic, is that they've kind of stayed with the idea of improving the camera over time, and that makes me have a lot of confidence in the idea of buying more Panasonic cameras. As a matter of fact, I've bought a G85 since I bought the GH5 as a B camera, and I feel really good about these cameras, even though they're micro four thirds, smaller sensor and everything, but they're just so effective, and they're cost effective at that. You get so much bang for the buck, and the lenses aren't incredibly expensive, with the exception maybe of that 200mm prime that everybody wants. But anyway, the lenses are very affordable compared to full frame glass, and to get comparable results, or even better in a lot of cases with video, it's just kind of hard to beat this. Now, this camera's been out for about 2 years now, and I still think it's one of the best possible cameras for video that you could buy. And it's even come down a little bit in price now, so if you're thinking about getting into a camera like this, I really would consider this, the Panasonic GH5. There's a lot of good stuff out there with full frame mirrorless and things like that, but it's really hard to get all these features in those cameras. It seems like everything that I've seen about the image stabilization of the Sony cameras it's good, but it's not like the Panasonic stabilization. And anything that I've seen for image quality and stuff like that, I'm still so impressed by the Panasonic. So if you've got a Sony camera, sorry, I don't mean to offend you. I know those cameras are fantastic, but I'm really still very impressed with the Panasonic for video. I feel like the full frame cameras would still be a great way to go if you're a little heavier on the still photography side of things. But if you're trying to do video and get into some filmic or cinematic, as they say, type of video work without buying a cinema camera, I think the GH5 is really hard to beat. Now, they are coming out with a full frame camera, or maybe two, I think, sometime this year, they say, and we'll see how all that plays out. But it's going to be hard to get all these features crammed into that camera that the GH5 has and make it perform on this level. I'll be really curious. It'd be great if it would, but it's going to be expensive if they can do that, I'm sure, and of course the glass will cost lots more. So those are my thoughts about having the camera for about 15 months now, and I really couldn't be more pleased with it. There have been a few times when there's some things happen, like it would lock up or whatever. I think that's just going to happen when you have a lot of processing going on in these things. They're basically little computers, and occasionally if I switch between the modes while it's trying to do already trying to do a task of some kind or something like that, occasionally it would lock up. There's been a couple of times where I actually had to remove the battery to reboot the camera, but so far so good. Nothing's been corrupted or had a real problem, so even though it's a little frightening when that happens in certain situations, but nevertheless, nothing too bad to report on it, and a lot of good to report on the GH5 after this amount of time. And I look forward to keeping on using it, and I look forward to maybe sticking with the Micro Four Thirds for a while. And I'm also curious, though, about that full frame stuff they're going to come out with, so we'll see how all that plays out. I'd like to hear your thoughts, too, on whether you like the GH5 or the Micro Four Thirds system, or if you hate it or don't want one, or you think everything else is better than that, or you think it's better than everything else. What do you think? Leave it in the comments. I'd like to check it out. And if you like this video, click like, subscribe, and come back and see me soon. It's been quiet all day, dead silent. Nobody's been here, nothing. But the second you walk outside with a camera with a microphone on it, just all hell breaks loose.